So after 7 years, the show which has become a staple on Netflix has concluded, and we finally got to see how the story of Joe Goldberg came to an end with You Season 5. With an additional 6 murders being added to his kill list in this season of the show, we saw the man that was obsessed with finding his You and killing for those that he deemed as broken meeting an end that felt somewhat satisfying. With a conclusion that felt emotional and also hard-hitting, I feel the wrapping up of the story was right for a character that was as evil and messed up as what he was. So with that, let's dive into the ending of the show and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is a review of You Season 5 and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The ending explained. When it came to the ending of this season, I thought that it was handled relatively appropriately. We saw that after Joe moved back to New York City, a place where his entire story began, this whole season was about how he wanted the perfect ending. Even writing a novel himself which was mirroring how he wanted his own story to conclude. After a climactic penultimate episode where we saw that Mariam returned and was alongside Kate and Nadia, who had Joe contained inside of his infamous cage where he committed multiple murders, Louise rescued him from the blaze that was set by Maddie. However, Louise ultimately saved him with the intention of eventually getting the confession out of him about how he killed Beck, the person that was revealed to be her tutor when she was at university, hence why Louise was working under the alias of Bronte when she met Joe and made him fall in love with her. Something which didn't go according to plan because she did end up questioning if he was actually capable of killing Beck because she was charmed by him. This was the whole point of their interaction, because it showed just how powerful of a weapon love could be if somebody like Joe were to be encountered, because that was the very thing that had the capability of causing harm and damage, as we saw from him with many of the people that he killed throughout the seasons of the show. Joe was ultimately planning on going on the run with her because he genuinely believed that she saw him for who he truly was, and that she was accepting of the fact that he was this killer. This was the very thing that we saw him searching for throughout the entirety of the show, somebody that allowed him to be the true version of himself, as with everybody else, other than love I'd say, he had to hide certain parts. He thought he had it with Kate, as we saw when she went to him to get him to kill his uncle, but when she later revealed that she despised her involvement in that and the fact that he relished in the idea of killing people, it showed him that she wasn't right for him, and with him believing that Louise gave him that acceptance, he started an affair with her when she was Bronte. During the final episode, we saw that Louise had a plan of killing Joe whilst they were in the home where they were lying low because Joe was now on the run. She planned on killing him that evening because she knew that she was struggling to hide the true feelings that she had towards him and was repulsed with the idea of being intimate with him. The talk that she had with Marion in the penultimate episode was the very thing that brought her mind back on track, and I would argue was one of the most powerful moments in the entirety of the show, because it brought to light how Joe was able to gain control, manipulate her feelings, and lure her into a position of feeling as though she was being cared and protected, whilst also making her believe that she couldn't be like one of those people that you hear about. It was an eye-opening moment for Louise, and like I said, a moment that you felt through the screen. It brought to life the reality that many people go through and the thought process that people in that situation can potentially have. With Louise showing her hand and holding him at gunpoint in the bed, she made him remove all of the parts of Beck's book that he finished, which essentially gave Beck her voice back after he took that away from her, following him taking her life. And we saw that whilst caught in the confrontation, Joe got a call from Will where he was put through to Henry. This was also another powerful moment in the episode. Joe had spent the entirety of the past few seasons wanting to protect and look out for Henry, and ultimately not give him the upbringing and trauma that he had when he was younger. This was because he feared that Henry would end up like him, and Joe would end up like his own father. Henry's opinion mattered more than anybody for him, and when Joe was finally put through to his son, he called him a monster because of what he did to his mother, which essentially made Joe realize that the person that he loved most in the world now despised him. And it also tied back to what Love said in season 3 when she said how Henry would eventually find out what he is. Joe made himself out to be the victim in all of this, saying how no matter how hard he tried to love, it would always go wrong. With Joe's greatest fear now being present in his life, which was his son viewing him how he viewed his father, that then led him to attack Louise, and the way that this scene was executed, with the lights swinging and the darkness sometimes taking over completely as the fight progressed, it just added such tension and it had me leaning forward on the edge of my seat. It concluded with Louise being shot and Joe chasing after her until he thought that he drowned her, but she pretended that he was successful and ultimately ended up finding him and pointing the gun towards him. With the police closing in, he was on his knees with next to no clothes on, which showed another sense of vulnerability and exposure to him, and he was begging for her to kill him. The idea of him being alone and without love, rotting in a cell for the rest of his days was a prospect that was his greatest nightmare. He was abandoned when he was a child and spent the entirety of his adult life feeling like he had to kill in order for the person that he loved to stay with him, because he didn't want to be alone. And with the person that he loved turning against him and sentencing him to an eternity of loneliness, he would have rather been dead. With him running towards her, she fired at him, but he didn't end up being killed. Joe was ultimately arrested and charged with the murder of Bec Guinevere and Love Quinn, and from there we saw that many of the other murder victims started getting pinned on him too. Right at the end, with it cutting to the prison cell that Joe was in, all we heard was complete silence. It was deafening. He was alone, which was his greatest fear of all. His son despised him. He had nobody at all, and he was now bound to spend the rest of his days in the cell, remembering the faces of the people that he killed. He was reading the novel, The Executioner's Song, which is a novel about real-life killer Gary Gilmore and how he embraced his death sentence rather than fighting against it. For the likes of Joe Goldberg, a death sentence was something that he wished for, as he didn't want to spend the rest of his life on his own, unloved and tormented by everything that happened because he didn't feel it was his fault. And with The Executioner's Song depicting the idea of why Gilmore didn't fight it, it was all but a dream for the likes of Joe. The final thing that we heard in the finale was Joe questioning why it was that he was receiving love letters from people despite all of the horror that he'd inflicted on others. Fan mail saying how they'd like to be trapped in a cage with him. Joe put the question and statement towards us as the episode drew out in saying, maybe the problem isn't me in society, it's you. First of all, I like the fact that the title of the episode was the final word that was ever spoken. That's something that I thought worked quite well. But I also think it took on a couple of different meanings for me. The first is almost like with the likes of this show, Joe Goldberg was this handsome person that people were falling head over heels for outside of the show and glamorizing, when at his core he was a killer that was murdering many people. So I feel like that's something that's definitely thought-provoking and connects to his statements. And another is that it felt like it showed that Joe didn't take responsibility for his actions, even right at the end, showing that he didn't feel like he acted in a way that wasn't for love, almost as if that's what you should do. Justifying that he only ever killed because he felt he was doing it for the right reasons, when it was obviously wrong. The final episode had a unique take on it because we also got to see inside of Louise's mind and hear how she was thinking and feeling as she was narrating, something the show has only ever really done a couple of times. And with it being the final episode, it felt right because it gave her a voice and it was like a representation of all of the women. This was Joe's story, but sadly as well, it was many of the other women that Joe killed too. Louise even narrated over the ending scene where he was arrested and spoke about what punishment he faced, something that felt right too, rather than having him speaking about it. I also like the fact that she mentioned how Joe Goldberg didn't define her life. Her life didn't come down to before or after Joe, as if to imply that he got more attention than he deserved when it came to her as a person. So that was a powerful approach. I think Joe ultimately got the ending that he deserved. It was always going to be, should he die or should he end up in jail? And I think him being in jail, alone, living his worst fear, was definitely the best approach for him. He didn't look glamorous or charming anymore with his shaved head whilst in the prison uniform. He looked exactly like what he was, the deranged, crazy serial killer that was now behind bars. It was a great ending to the show. My review of the final season. I thought this was a really good season of the show. I would place it higher than the previous season for sure. It was nice going back to 10 episodes. None of this part 1 and part 2 stuff. It was just all there for us to digest and we could watch the entire story in one go if we wanted to. Having the story wrapping up right back where it started felt perfect, and with Mooney's also being incinerated, it felt like it truly marked the end. It was poetic. This did definitely feel like a season of two halves, and I feel like that was deliberate and also the right approach. The first half was all about showing us Joe's life that he was relatively content with, but then we saw the introduction of Louise, his marriage falling apart, and it feeling like him being confronted by not only the ghosts of his past life, but the people that were going to destroy his future. The music in this season was really strong. I think this is the best score that the show has had. One moment in particular that I absolutely loved was from the first episode. During the conclusion of it, Joe walked into Mooney's basement for the first time to see the box, and there was almost this romantic piece that was playing underneath his voiceover. But then when the box was shown to us, it turned really melancholic and haunting, showing the different feelings that this box emitted for Joe. Romance because it's where he kept the people that he loved, but haunting because of the things that he'd done to them there. When it came to Kate in this season, I thought she was way more tolerable than what she was in season 4. There was something about her in the previous season that I didn't really like that much, but in this one she felt so much more relatable, and the human side in her was something that I thought was easy to attach to. It was also great that she survived the season 2, because I genuinely thought that she was another victim of Joe's when episode 9 finished. I also feel like Louise was a really good character as well. Having the twist take place with her actually being a catfish was great, but then in having her actually fall in love with Joe, it was something that added real weight to the story and showed the power that he could have and actually how easy it can be to be blindsided by love, even when you know just how dangerous of a person there is in front of you. I thought it was a nice touch to have many previous characters appearing in different forms too. The likes of Paco appearing was a great moment, but even Dottie, Ethan, Will, Sherry and Kerry, and even Marion. It was nice to see the show almost pay homage to characters that served the show well in the past. I was just a bit gutted that Delilah never really got a mention, and we didn't get anything from Ellie too. She felt like the Paco of season 2, and I'm gutted we didn't get anything from her. Overall, I think You has been a great show on Netflix. It's been one of their staples, and I think it ended at the right time. 5 seasons is plenty, and it went out by not making Joe the protagonist and the charming person that we all knew him for. It showed him as the true antagonist that he was, and with him being stripped down to his underwear, almost as bare as the day that he was born when he was arrested, there was truly nowhere to hide for him. Joe Goldberg had his comeuppance, and he was destined to spend the rest of his life in his own personal version of hell. Something that definitely felt appropriate. So, there you have it, a review of You Season 5 and the ending explained. If you want to see every season of the show being broken down, yeah, I've been covering it for years now, then click on the card in the top corner, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of the final season? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.